Thank you for joining us and good afternoon. I'm your host, David Hiltz. Joining us today is Dr. Tom Aufderheide. Following an overview of the time to act recommendations by Dr. Aufderheide, we will discuss what we can do today with the science and resources available through guided community strategies. We will get to Dr. Aufderheide in just a few minutes. This live webcast is brought to you and is made possible in part through the generous financial support of the Citizen CPR Foundation by these organizations. You can learn more about our supporters by visiting us at citizencpr.org. The mission of the Citizen CPR Foundation is to save lives from sudden cardiac arrest by stimulating effective community, professional, and citizen education. We believe that community-based approaches can enable communities to strengthen local stakeholder collaboration, encourage data collection, analysis, and dissemination, facilitate the implementation of life-saving science, promote public education and training, improve the delivery of high-quality resuscitation and post-arrest care, enhance the impact of cardiac arrest therapies, and save more lives. We recognize your contributions to improving resuscitation outcomes, and thank you for joining us in our life-saving mission. We have a few announcements for you this afternoon. For your first announcement, the Citizen CPR Foundation's Cardiac Arrest Survival Summit is returning once again to the great city of San Diego from November 29th through December 2nd, 2023. So mark your calendars, inform your teams, and we will keep you updated as additional details about Summit as they become available. We hope to see you all there. Next, our peers at the Resuscitation Academy conduct extraordinary webinars that occur on the third Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anyone and everyone with interest in resuscitation science and implementation should make plans to participate in these webinars as a matter of routine. Please look for information specific to these monthly calls in your post-webinar email from the Citizen CPR Foundation. Further, on October 20th, in recognition of World Restart a Heart Day, the Global Resuscitation Alliance will be hosting a webinar to discuss how to get the best results and impact for improving survival in the community from sudden cardiac arrest. The Restart a Heart initiative was introduced in 2013 by the European Resuscitation Council, and it shares the important message that all citizens of the world can save a life. This webinar will include speakers who will deliver regional sessions on improving survival from sudden cardiac arrest and an expert panel discussing how to get the best results and impact. Information regarding this don't miss event will also be included in your post-webcast email to each of you. As a reminder, please mute your microphones and use the chat function to capture your questions and feedback during this webcast. We ask that participants be respectful at all times and refrain from sharing negative or degrading comments, as well as specific product and service promotions. Any images of products appearing in these webinars are for discussion purposes only and do not represent endorsement by the Citizen CPR Foundation. And now, on to our guest and featured discussion, planning nationally and implementing locally to save lives. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Tom Aufderheide, a professor of emergency medicine, an associate chair of research affairs, and the director of the NIH-funded Resuscitation Research Center in the Department of Emergency Medicine at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Continuously NIH funded for over 30 years, he is an internationally recognized researcher in the field of emergency cardiac care, whose scholarly achievements have had a significant impact on the practice of emergency medicine. Dr. Aufderheide developed and pioneered the use of out-of-hospital 12-lead ECGs, which now forms the basis of STEMI programs in most developed communities throughout the world, reducing mortality by 38% in the United States alone. Dr. Aufderheide's discoveries of the detrimental effects of excessive ventilation and incomplete chest recoil, as well as the methods to improve hemodynamics through intrathoracic pressure regulation during CPR, have shaped clinical practice nationally and internationally. He has been instrumental also in evaluating extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, or ECMO. And I mean, it just goes on. Dr. Aufderheide, we are absolutely delighted to have you on, and I'm going to go ahead and release control to you so that you may present your slides. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Dave. I'd like to thank the Citizen CPR Foundation, the sponsors of this webcast, Heart Safe Communities, and David Hiltz for the opportunity to be here today and to have this important discussion. To start us off, I'm going to just review the IOM report on cardiac arrest. Before we jump into this, just some presenter disclosure information. I have some grants from the National Institutes of Health, which are shown here. I have an unrestricted research grant from Zoll Medical. I've done a lot of work with biomedical devices under investigational device exemptions from the Food and Drug Administration. I have absolutely no financial interest whatsoever in any device or company. I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm vice president of Take Heart America. I've been past president of the Citizen CPR Foundation, a volunteer in a variety of different capacities for the National American Heart Association. And particularly for today's presentation, I conceived of, helped generate funding for, and ultimately co-authored the Institute of Medicine, or IOM, report on cardiac arrest. It is important that you understand that the contents of my presentation today are solely my responsibility and do not represent the official views of the National Academy of Medicine. So with those disclosures, we'll jump in. The IOM committee of individuals that the Institute of Medicine put together were really, frankly, remarkable and are shown here. There were national and international experts in the entire spectrum of cardiac arrest care, including emergency medical services, clinical trials, experts in basic science, pediatrics, importantly, health equity, which is an important aspect of emergency cardiac care. AEDs, public access to fibrillation, biostatistics, neurology, cerebral preservation, neurological outcome, nursing, hospital-based care, and intensive care. Really a remarkable group of experts that came to the conclusion of the 8 recommendations we'll discuss. Many thanks to the sponsors who made, shown here, that made the IOM report possible. So when writing a report for the Institute of Medicine, the authors are given what's called a statement of task. That is, the report had to abide by the following task. So we needed to evaluate the current status of and the future opportunities to improve cardiac arrest outcomes in the United States, examine statistics and variability in cardiac arrest survival rates in the United States, and assess scientific evidence on existing life-saving therapies and public health strategies to improve survival rates. Specifically focus on CPR and the use of AEDs, EMS and hospital resuscitation systems of care, national cardiac arrest statistics, resuscitation research, and next steps to significantly enhance survival. So some major themes came out of these discussions. And I think they're important to review. First, that cardiac arrest can strike anyone, and it affects hundreds of thousands of people each year. It is an event that requires a system of response. Speed, time, and quality of care matter. New knowledge and evidence are needed, and we'll come back to this, but leadership and accountability are absolutely crucial to improve the system response and outcomes from cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest can strike seemingly healthy individuals of all races, age, gender, often without warning. Survival rates are low for almost 600,000 people who experience cardiac arrest each year in the US, and poor neurologic and functional outcomes can result. There are wide disparities in cardiac arrest outcome that exist, dependent on demographics, geographic characteristics, socioeconomic status, and system level characteristics that need to be addressed. However, at the same time, benchmark communities demonstrate that the ability to save more lives is possible. We currently have a major issue with reliable data when it comes to cardiac arrest. We don't know exactly how many people die each year of cardiac arrest in the United States. When we say 600,000, it is nothing more than an estimate. It's essential to be able to measure the problem in order to impact treatments and interventions and establish evidence-based practice, as well as to improve care. If you don't measure it, you cannot improve it. Currently, available data are inadequate, and there is no national cardiac arrest registry. So to facilitate informed discussions with the public, with policymakers, with the government, we need much better data at a national level. So the first recommendation of the IOM report was to establish a national cardiac arrest registry. The registry should include in-hospital cardiac arrest, out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, children as well as adults, and it should be mandatory to report cardiac arrest events. Cardiac arrest requires a system response. It is not a heart attack. Every time I hear about cardiac arrest on the news, the reporter always says the person died of a heart attack, and in fact, people are doing CPR. They really had a cardiac arrest. The awareness of the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest of the public is extremely poor. It is an event, the majority of which occur in our own community settings. There's a wide range of individuals who should be prepared to act as a result. fundamental to this is bystanders. The organization is called Citizen CPR Foundation, and it is for a reason. The citizen is a crucial element of improved survival from cardiac arrest. So it affects bystanders, family members, first responders, EMS personnel, hospital-based providers, healthcare system providers. It requires a system of response. This is our model, and we've all seen this many, many times. This is the American Heart Association chain of survival: early recognition, early CPR, early defibrillation, high quality EMS care, high quality hospital-based care, and now, importantly, focus on improved recovery following discharge from the hospital. This is the model that we are all taught and which we all accept as important to occur in a sequence of events to optimize outcome. Unfortunately, the reality in most of our communities is this is what the chain of survival actually looks like. It isn't linked. It does not occur. And the end result is a poor survival rate from cardiac arrest. Over the years, I've taken the opportunity whenever I meet a survivor from cardiac arrest, and I always ask them the same thing, is tell me about your event. What happened? And to a person, they always start the same way. I just so happened to collapse next to an AED on the wall, and then it just so happened that a off-duty paramedic was walking down the hallway and saw me, et cetera, et cetera. The chain of survival in our communities occurs as the exception, not the rule. And we need to have the chain of survival be implemented sequentially well as a standard, not as an exception. The time really makes a difference in results and outcome from cardiac arrest. Time to first compressions, the time to first defibrillation are crucial and the best way to improve outcome. Importantly, any action delivered by the public is better than no action at all. This is such an important concept, and I don't think it is very well appreciated. I'm going to divert for just a second to a story that really underscores this. My own program manager has given me permission to talk about this. His name is Jake. He was playing a pickup basketball game at a school in Wisconsin. All schools in Wisconsin have AEDs in them as part of Project Adam. His friend, who is 32 at the time, collapsed. And he went to his friend and assessed him, and the entire 30 people who are playing basketball standing around said, oh, he's just fainted, he doesn't need CPR, don't do CPR. Well, Jake was wise enough and smart enough to realize that he was not fainted, and in fact, he was breathing abnormally, did not have a pulse. He also knew that the school had an AED. And so he mobilized the team and said, go out throughout the school and find the AED, bring it back as fast as you can. He eventually started CPR. They brought the AED back, and on the second shock, his friend woke up, started talking, and was totally back to normal, alert and oriented by the time the ambulance arrived. In his discussion with me on this event, Jake was feeling horrible because he had delayed the onset of CPR. Okay. And I had to tell him any action however imperfect, is better than no action at all. You saved your friend's life. His friend is now married and just had his first child. He's 34 now, and what a wonderful story. But any action is better than no action by the public. Bystanders and family members are needed and necessary to activate 911 and emergency medical services and to provide care. We have a problem in the US, and the problem is we have a culture of inaction. The image that I have burned into my head is the picture of a cardiac arrest on a New York City sidewalk with 100 people standing around in a circle doing absolutely nothing. We have a culture of inaction, and we need to change that and foster a culture of action through public awareness and training, the second recommendation from the IOM report. And we do that through a variety of ways: CPR training, AED training in the schools, at work, but particularly through CPR in the schools, which should be in middle as well as high school. And then we will foster a generation of individuals who feel an obligation to act rather than have a culture of inaction. High quality care from EMS and hospital professionals can save lives. Their mechanism to encourage performance measurement are absolutely fundamental. We have to measure our performance there also, and implement continuous quality improvement programs. The recommendation is to improve capabilities and performance of EMS systems also through hospitals and healthcare systems, and to implement quality improvement programs in those in EMS and healthcare systems throughout our communities. In addition, we need some new knowledge and evidence. To minimize death and disability, we have to have better treatments, therapies, and protocols. Approximately 70% of the first document cardiac arrest rhythms typically do not respond to defibrillation and need new and better care. It's important to translate our research discoveries into new insights and new treatments. Therefore, we recommend to accelerate the research into pathophysiology, new therapies, and translation of science, to accelerate research on the adoption, early adoption of high quality, impactful treatments. And we also need renewed leadership, accountability, and advocacy. We need sustained federal, state, and local leadership, and it's absolutely necessary to have that to improve outcomes across the country. The public should expect accountability from their leaders through public reporting of data. If I'm going to move to Denver, I should be able to find out publicly what the cardiac arrest survival rate is in Denver. I'm not getting any younger, okay? I happen to live in a community today that has the second highest survival rate, so I guess the only other city I could move to would be Seattle. But be that as it may, we should expect accountability from our leaders, and to generate appropriate leadership and levels of accountability, the resuscitation field needs to better coordinate its advocacy efforts for improved outcome from cardiac arrest. So the last recommendation is to create a national cardiac arrest collaborative to move these 8 steps forward nationally. This is a visual of really the 8 steps that just were reviewed. Fundamental to this, this approach is data, continuous comprehensive surveillance and reporting, then community engagement, new treatments and treatment practices, adoption of those practices, training and education, and local translation of research of best practices into clinical practice, buttressed by leadership and accountability. Implementing quality improvement throughout the process, which supports the 5 pillars of cardiac arrest that we need to, that this supports, which is the public, the emergency medical services, hospital and healthcare systems, researchers, and education professionals, all resulting in improved outcome from cardiac arrest. So this IOM report is free. You can download it from the link shown in this slide. Perhaps easier is simply to Google strategies to improve cardiac arrest survival, a time to act. One final point about the IOM report, it is a 450-page document, but you don't necessarily have to read all 450 pages. The important aspect are the recommendations. Those recommendations are 6 pages, page 11 to 17, and the other 400 pages are the scientific justification for those recommendations. So thank you for allowing me to have an overview. I'm really looking forward to the discussion on local implementation of this this approach, and I'll throw it back your way, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So Dr. Aufderheide, thank you very much for that terrific overview. A lot of what you said has resonated with me today, as it has in the past. And in a few minutes, and thank you for the permission, I'm going to talk about, implementation and translation at a local level. But before I bring those slides up and move through that content very quickly so we have an opportunity to discuss further with our audience, I wanted to quickly ask you, what have been the principal barriers, in short, the principal barriers to national implementation of the recommendations? And then I'll talk about, barriers at the local level, but I'd love to hear from you, as I'm certain the rest of us as well.
Sure. One is the how difficult it is to generate a coordinated, unified, and highly focused national response from various different aspects of cardiac arrest interests. Of course, we have hospital-based and EMS, and we have community and citizens, and et cetera. And it is a challenge to coordinate all of that into a single focus nationally. Second, I'd say, is always the same. It's funding, okay? Now, in that regard, in Congress today is the Carroll Act. And many of people, some of you on the webinar today may recognize the Carroll Act. It has passed the Senate, it's passed the House and needs to be approved by the Senate. The Carroll Act was a resulting act to support more research as well as funding for a national cardiac arrest database and registry for the first time. So look that up, write your senator, and lobby hard to have the Carroll Act implemented, because if it is, and if it is passed, we will have for the first time sustained funding for CDC national database. We're really, really excited. However, in general, funding is an issue. There are a lot of cultural things, Dave. there's a lack of public awareness of the real critical nature of the third leading cause of death in the United States. Most people see CPR on the television. 95% of people on the TV wake up after two compressions, cough once, and say thank you, and go about their life. Okay? There's a lack of public awareness that this is the third leading cause of death, and that we have very effective interventions that can really make a difference in terms of outcome. I mentioned this national culture of inaction. We can do much better with sustained federal, state, and local advocacy and leadership, and as well as accountability. So those are some of the things, not different than what you might see also locally too.
All right. Excellent. That was perfect. And now I'm going to try to move through some additional content fairly quickly here. Hold on, if I can get my computer to cooperate, that would be wonderful. Let's see, I'm going to stop sharing and try one more time. Let's see if we can do it this time. All right, are my slides moving? Yes. All right.
We are not seeing them, David.
You're not seeing them. Let me try one more time. Unfortunately, we can do this just on screen if necessary. Let's see. Let's try one more time. How about now?
There we go.
All right. Okay. Again, Tom, thank you so much. And I'm going to try to move through this fairly quickly. I'm going to paint with a broad brush, but hopefully not inaccurately. Challenges in optimizing outcomes through effective community resuscitation are formidable. I mean, truly formidable. And as you mentioned, an essential key to success is mobilizing community support, finding partners and champions, assessing needs and available resources, organizing and conducting assessments, prioritizing, evaluation on an ongoing basis, an eye for sustainability, and in short, maximizing the effectiveness of all of the available local resources. I think we often underestimate what local resources are available because we haven't really inventoried and organized them in a fashion that can really optimize their utility. And, this statement I pulled directly from the IOM report, and it struck me when I first read it. And it reads like this: the very nature of cardiac arrest requires bystanders to be ready, willing, and able to act. Additionally, to be successful, their actions in combination with care provided by our EMS, fire, and first responder agencies must occur within a system that coordinates and integrates each facet of care into a choreographed group effort, focusing on neurologically intact survival to discharge from the hospital. So a cardiac arrest like we see here, a scene from Richland, Washington, should look more like a scene from West Side Story than, a bull run in Madrid. And so the IOM and your team did an excellent job of coming up with these 8 recommendations. And, looking at time to treatment as the true enemy here and the need for multi-agency collaboration and leadership at the national and even more critically at the local level and the communities where we all work and live is like really where we need to get drilling down here. And so the Citizen CPR Foundation has 6 core community strategies that you can see here that support the IOM recommendations, but more at a local level. Core community strategy goals make sense, but how can we actually achieve these objectives, right? And so I think that before we explore, tactical recommendations, I'd say that there's a couple of philosophies that I want to talk about here. And first and foremost, and again, kind of reaffirming things that you've already said, is the bias for action, and a bias for action at every level. Well, whether we're talking about, a witness who's seen somebody suddenly collapse, all the way to leadership at any level, we need to have this bias for action, because kind of the worst mistake we can make at almost any level is to do nothing, right? And also we need to think of resuscitation as a team sport, right? Virtually everything in resuscitation requires teamwork. Collaboration among citizens, professionals, communities, and organizations is necessary. No matter whether you're helping to build a stronger system, whether you're designing a piece of resuscitative technology, designing a course, everything within resuscitation requires teamwork. And because of this, we need to adopt that philosophy. Reaffirming once again the critical need for measurement as part of the ongoing quality improvement process, not just once, but ongoing throughout the entire lifespan of the campaign, right? I'd also like to go in a little bit further here and talk briefly about combining strategy and tactics. This is a powerful duo, and there is a little bit of nuance in the difference. An important point is that the question isn't strategy versus tactics, but strategy and tactics. And, there's kind of a familiar anecdote here. Every battle is won before it is fought. So this begs the need for good planning, right? So we need to have strategies, but then we need tactics that help get us to those goals. And without that, we're destined for failure. So here is my feeble attempt at doing a word cloud. But what I've tried to do here is kind of give you a visual of the 13 tactics that are recommended by the Citizen CPR Foundation. And there's no surprises here. Having a lead agency, using data to drive strategies and tactics, training the citizenry, celebrating rescuer actions, educating and empowering the public, implementing TCPR and telephone-guided use of automated external defibrillators, planned and practiced performance in the form of emergency action plans, combined with drills, strategic placement of AEDs that are accessible 24/7, not placement where there is privilege and restricting access, but really putting them where they belong and making them, accessible all hours of the day and night. Developing and sustaining 911 integrated AED registries, achieving first responder defibrillation capability as a norm, implementing high performance CPR, and aggressively supporting primary and secondary prevention and health promotion. Through implementation, communities can establish some really robust life-saving networks. But here's where it gets a little tricky. Here's where I roll up the sleeves a little bit, right? It's said that improving outcomes isn't complicated, but it isn't easy. I suspect there's a few people on the call who recognize this statement. But I'm certain that when you look at this, particularly the parents in here, can you imagine trying to put together something as simple as a Lego set without any instructions? Or, gosh forbid, right? You don't even have the top lid with a photo representing the final product. What would we do, right? That's something simple like a Lego becomes incredibly complex. So I'm going to ramp up this analogy a little bit and talk about aircraft. Aircraft are constructed from materials from all over the world by different manufacturers, innovators, and so forth. And they're building something that needs to be fail-safe, right? The plane needs to safely take off, it needs to fly and land both reliably and safely again and again. Planes like the Dreamliner are made up of simple and complex parts from all over the world. But again, careful, precise assembly, flown expertly, and continuous maintenance is needed in order to make them work, right? So our cardiac arrest systems or care are very similar. They're designed to save lives and composed of many different and valuable parts. Could we as advocate champions do a better job if we had some kind of blueprint or set of instructions, even if they are just kind of rudimentary? We're familiar with this formula for survival, and local implementation is key. And knowing this, the Citizen CPR Foundation has looked to create HeartSafe, which is really just a program to help guide local implementation of life-saving recommendations. As part of this program, the Citizen CPR Foundation created kind of a host of community-based approaches and put it into a package, if I may. And the evidence-based recommendations, as well as the best practices and innovations described in the guide, present interrelated, action-oriented steps that when they're combined, right? Combined, that's really critical, that when they're combined should enable both short and long-term improvements for people in cardiac arrest. And within this guide, you can find some more specifics on what I describe as kind of the ultimate do-it-yourself project. And these assets and resources come from many different sources, just like the parts and equipment on a Dreamliner aircraft. Furthermore, as an organization, we're looking beyond the evidence-based recommendations and fostering the idea of player coaches, where in the player coach model, we're connecting individuals, agencies, and systems with one another for the purposes of sharing expertise, talent, guidance, and experience. And again, these action-oriented steps, when combined, should provide some very significant results. So has the Citizen CPR Foundation perfected an approach to improving cardiac arrest outcomes? No. What they have done is developed a beginning or a starting point, a beginning that will continue to evolve alongside of scientific discoveries, new treatment recommendations, evolving innovations, and best practices. And in the words of the venerable Vince Lombardi pictured here, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. So it's our collective hope that our combined efforts will inspire and guide communities in implementing life-saving strategies with our partners, always striving to help save more lives by preventing sudden cardiac arrest from becoming sudden cardiac death. And so what I'd like to do now is for our support team to help us with some questions and hopefully answers from the audience. Then we're going to look for some reflections from Dr. Aufderheide. So support team, are there some questions out there that we could help to answer?
There are quite a few questions, so I will just start from the top. A question from Elizabeth Salvucci Phillipson asked at the beginning of Dr. Aufderheide's presentation, do the statistics include cardiac arrest due to trauma, like gunshot wounds?
They do not. These are the statistics or the IOM report was focused on cardiac arrest of presumed cardiac etiology.
And another question from Cindy Tate. She asks, what are your thoughts on hospitals and other facilities that fast track their staff through BLS, ACLS, and PALS renewal classes?
I'm not sure that I have a direct opinion about that. However, I would say in general, it's crucially important that we deliver high quality care. Remember in the IOM report, time and quality of care matter. So however you achieve that, I would advocate for that.
Yeah, and I would chime in as well. Thank you, Dr. Aufderheide, that, educational efficiency is part of that formula for survival. And I think, coming from a resuscitation education background, at least to a certain extent, I'd say, that's something that is a continuous work in progress as well, is that how do we determine what is the best educational approach for various populations, and that requires additional work. Excellent question. One that would probably consume a full hour to give it the discussion that it deserves. Duly noted, and thank you for the question.
And we have another from Alma Marin. She asks, does the CARES registry cover all the data that needs to be captured?
You want me to take that, Dave?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right up your alley, Doc.
Okay. All the data that can be captured is highly open-ended. So obviously not. Our database in Milwaukee has 250 data points. CARES is a single page. However, I would say this about CARES. I'm a fan of CARES because it consolidates the absolutely crucial information we need to know into the smallest form and amount that is widely achievable in almost any location in the country. And it has great advantages for that reason.
Very good. I know there's some more excellent questions.
There are a question from Catherine Allen. Any advice about how to get CPR and AED training made mandatory in schools? The US is far ahead of Canada in this respect, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for helping us make it a reality up here. We've tried approaching government several times, but can't seem to get their buy-in or support.
I can take that one.
Sure.
Another excellent question. And I'm afraid I'm probably not going to be able to contribute as much time to it as it deserves. But what I would suggest is that if you're interested in like the advocacy angle in regards to resuscitation and improved outcomes, there was a recent webinar that Citizen CPR Foundation did with a professor from Bentley University, as well as a government relations staffer from the American Heart Association, that talks about the advocacy process. And clearly it's a case where a rising tide will lift all boats, okay? Where you really need to collectively work to really move the idea forward. Because there's a lot of resistance to change all around, regardless of whether it's introducing CPR in the schools or any other changes that we're looking to execute within the system of care for our cardiac arrest patients. And certainly, by the way, and you'll be happy to hear this, Dr. Aufderheide, you're going to get an email from a Citizen CPR Foundation like within, an hour of the conclusion of today's show. And the links to the IOM report are going to be in there, as well as a host of other assets for you to help you navigate through some of this stuff. This is not easy. If it were, we wouldn't be all working so diligently to change the system and improve outcomes. So look for more, and you're always welcome. Everyone is always welcome to reach out to me for further discussion and guidance. Another excellent question.
And
What else do we
a
have?
follow-up comment there, Dave. The United States effort has been probably a concerted effort for 25 years, and we're still not there. We've got about 2/3 of the states, and many of the states that do have it in name only. So my advice would be, do not give up.
Excellent. Do we have any additional questions?
We do. We have a question from Paul Morris, who also has his hand raised. And he says he's trying to establish a verified responder program within PulsePoint. These VRs are not employed through agencies or departments. So I think maybe he's asking for help in establishing that verified responder program in PulsePoint.
Yeah, so Paul, thank you very much for the question and sharing your challenge. I'd suggest that we get together outside of today's webcast to discuss it further. I mean, the whole idea of crowdsourcing around cardiac arrest has been intriguing for me. I was introduced to the notion probably about well over a decade ago, and it was something that the Europeans were really doing, and I was just like, my jaw was wide open, right? It's like, wow, the thought of neighbors being notified on their, cell phones and beepers that, somebody nearby needed help, and that they were not only trained and equipped, but willing to respond and make a difference. I think what you're talking about has a great deal of potential, but we're not in a position to provide a really finite answer for you right now. But I would encourage you to reach out to me, as well as all of your peers, to continue working forward. It's a lot like Dr. Aufderheide's response to, CPR in the schools. Don't give up. It's really hard when you get a black eye or a bloody nose or a fat lip, as you're trying to save lives. But, that's another benefit of having player coaches all around you, so that you're not only just sharing successes, you're sharing failures. You might even cry on one another's shoulders periodically. This is necessary so that we can keep up a sustained effort, because there are a lot, even on the call today, who have been at this for decades. And some days it doesn't appear as we're taking any ground or we're making any progress, or in lieu of the global pandemic, some significant setbacks, no matter what, optics you're using and what you're looking at. These are excellent. Listen, I'd like to move forward and ask Dr. Aufderheide to provide us with some reflections as we move towards wrapping up today's webcast. Doctor, could you give us kind of just a minute or two, your reflections on what we've discussed today?
Well, first, I would say, David, that I'm inspired. And I'm inspired to see the IOM recommendations being focused for implementation and action at a local level, which is the only place you can do it. So it is just really inspiring to me to see this document generating real change. That is just wonderful to see. I'm also inspired by the Citizen CPR Foundation, the Resuscitation Academy, and the Heart Safe community organizations, which provide individuals with such tremendous support and to make change in their communities. That change makes a huge difference. And I guess the last thing I'll just reiterate again is that action is so much better than no action at all. Our action as human beings will be, by definition, imperfect. So don't worry about that. Act. It makes a huge difference. You will save lives.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Doctor. That was an excellent kind of jump off point, right? And dismount. So it's almost as if we had kind of planned this out. But, you know, the call to action as we wrap up today, you're all familiar with the Chinese proverb of a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so to that end, I would say that, you know, if you haven't done so already, look in your post webinar communication for 2 options to do a self-assessment. One is an excellent option from our dear friends at the Resuscitation Academy in Seattle. And then there's a second one made available through the Citizen CPR Foundation. Either one is more than adequate because, you know, you're just not going to be able to move forward with coordination and diligence without taking that look. And, you know, it's easier said than done, right? Because I've always said it's a lot like looking in a cosmetic mirror, you know, when you're at a hotel, at a conference, and you go, oh my gosh, what is that? You know, it's hard to look. It can be scary to look. But, you know, everything begins with an assessment. And then as we wrap up today's show, again, thank you, Dr. Aufderheide, for the fantastic presentation and discussion. We thank our audience for being with us. Look to join us next month for reflections on resuscitation in the land of Oz with Tony Walker. That will be a very exciting webcast. Tony and I are both very eager for that show to come. And I am David Hiltz, signing off on behalf of the Citizen CPR Foundation. Thank you and good night.